When we heard of Rabbi Maisel's passing, it was as if an earthquake had struck and the ground had moved. He was such a constant in our lives, and we often thought of him, perhaps irreverently, as the Duracell bunny. He was meant to endure, to go on and on, to be in our lives, and to share in our life cycle events forever. Rabbi Maisels and Esther were always available to accept our invitations and played such a vitally important role in creating the wonderful memories of these events. Rabbi's smile, kindness, generosity, thoughtfulness, work ethic, and above all, his impish sense of humor helped to keep everything in perspective and served as a wonderful example of how to live a Jewish life filled with quality and service and to enjoy the ride whilst doing so. For many years, we exchanged annual birthday gifts. I would buy Rabbi Maisels a book of short stories or essays, often relating to travel, and he would find me books relating to cats or other subjects that he knew I enjoyed. The books I gave him were always short stories or essays, because he confided to me that the only time he really had to read was on the plane, and so short stories were the easiest to read. The last book I gave him was for his birthday in October 2019, not long before he experienced his unfortunate health crisis on a flight from Johannesburg to Cape Town. The book's title is The Kindness of Strangers, and he said the timing was perfect because it was the kindness of strangers on that flight that helped him survive the incident. Rabbi Maisels was definitely no stranger, and in his many kindnesses were legend. And there were countless occasions on which he showed kindness to people without public publicity or any need for recognition. He knew I had a weakness for marshmallows, the kosher variety of which were only found locally at Pesach time. And so every year, when he went to supervise the kashrut of a local sweet factory that produced items for Pesach, he would smuggle me a packet or two of the fabulous marshmallows before they even appeared on the supermarket shelves. I felt very honored and enjoyed every mouthful, even more because of his kindness in sourcing them for me. Rabbi Maisels enjoyed interacting with people and enjoyed all hands-on activities. But he did not particularly enjoy writing articles for the then monthly newsletters issued by Camps Bay Shul. He dreaded the deadlines given to him and usually extended these by several days at least until with great relief and a big smile, he brought me the finished product. I learned quickly to set the deadlines at least a week before the article was required, but he soon caught onto this and he continued to set his own deadlines instead. The marvelous thing about this sort of situation was that Rabbi Maisels was always so good-natured about it, and we could always enjoy a great laugh, even whilst dealing with any frustrations or difficulties. Avron nagged Rabbi Maisels endlessly to please write a book on your incredible and often unique experiences. And I've learned that Natalie Barnett did the same. Rabbi Maisels' response was inevitably that he did not have the time, but if he had to consider doing so, it would only be when he retired one day. That is one deadline that he most unfortunately, and to our great loss, succeeded in avoiding. On many occasions, Rabbi Maisels was ready, willing and able to pick up a screwdriver or hammer and fix whatever needed fixing in the shul and at his home. It gave him great pleasure to save us having to call in someone to do the work at our expense. His medical training probably gave him some valuable skills in fixing what is broken. He loved building his home sukkah and calculated exactly the measurements thereof, designed with great precision and attention to detail to enable accommodating the maximum number of guests at Sukkot meals, so beautifully catered for by Esther and family. Rabbi Maisels always had a kind and cheerful word for the support staff at CBS, and Casper Daniels, Joan Withering, Vumile Mbeki, and Beauty Busso were extremely upset to hear of his passing. Casper wrote, "It was a shock for me. We lost an icon of a man who was always there for everybody, and I will miss his kind words and chat with me whenever he came to shul." Beauty Busso recalled an incident in May last year during the hard lockdown when she had to attend the Somerset Hospital clinic and found herself on the main road in Greenpoint with very little prospect of transport back to Camps Bay. Rabbi Maisels happened to park not far away, and as he walked past her, greeted her with his usual, "Hi, Sisi, what are you doing here?" Beauty explained, and the rabbi teasingly suggested that she should walk home, and then told her to wait for him until he had done his shopping, so that he could give her a lift to Camps Bay, which he duly did, even though he was only returning to his home in Sea Point. Vumile Mbeki delivered newspapers for many years, including to 23 the Sheviots, and he too remembered Rabbi Maisels with great fondness and respect. He spoke about how Rabbi Maisels taught him how to build a shul sukkah with utmost attention to halachic details, and Mbeki has been building the shul sukkah ever since then, except for 2020, that's another story. Rabbi Maisels would always take his time to chat to Mbeki in Kosa, and Rabbi would be respected always for respect that he himself showed to those with whom he interacted. My late brother, Peter Sternberg, living in Cape Town at the time, met up with Rabbi Maisels in Bloemfontein some years ago to drive him to Harare, stopping off at several small towns in order to check on the kashrut of food products at various factories. When Peter drove, the rabbi suggested he go faster, and when the rabbi drove, Peter begged him to drive more slowly. They arrived in Harare later than anticipated, and so it was too late to inspect the factory there as planned. As Rabbi was enjoying supper with his hosts at the home where he was being accommodated, the phone rang. The factory had remained open to enable the rabbi to check their products. By the time the rabbi arrived back home, it was time to go to the airport and catch a plane back to Johannesburg in time for a meeting. No sleep that night. Rabbi Maisels loved traveling, no matter where and no matter how. His countless local and overseas trips were planned meticulously by him, and he would have made an outstanding travel agent. His knowledge of flight and bus schedules was legendary, and he put together many trips that encompassed a wide variety of destinations, often with mere minutes between connecting flights. He was often worried about the practicality of catching flights that left after short periods of transit, but I personally never heard that he had missed any of these, although the only features Rabbi saw in many of the multitude of towns, cities, and countries he visited often focused only on the airport and the factories he was inspecting. Rabbi Maisels was determined while visiting China one year to see the Great Wall of China. This he managed to arrange, and on his return to Cape Town reported glowingly about his visit there, one of the many highlights of his many travels. Tellingly, however, it was the people with whom he interacted and worked who were the greatest interest to him, and with his gifts of mimicry and recollections, he was a brilliant raconteur, who kept many of those who were lucky enough to hear his stories endlessly enthralled and amused. For many years, until the advent of email, Rabbi Maisels took time and trouble to send me postcards from the many exotic and some more familiar destinations visited by him. The challenge of sourcing and choosing the postcards and the stamps was just one of the many that he seemed to enjoy, and he loved seeing the postcards displayed in the shul office on his return. Some years ago, the Maisels family visited my home of Gatuma, now Kaduma, in Zimbabwe. I hope I pronounced that right, Judy. They went to my parents' home, where the rabbi vaulted over the locked gate to knock on the door. He enjoyed a chat and asked directions to the home of my brother and sister-in-law, Peter and Hermione. The Maisels family then arrived at their flamboyant close home and, as arranged, parked their motorhome in the driveway overnight. After a chat, they retired to sleep in their motorhome, with the use of the house facilities via an unlocked kitchen door. Rabbi Maisels said that they could not drive through Gatuma without seeing where I had grown up and lived until I moved to Cape Town. Hermione took the Maisels family on a short tour of the town before they continued their great Zimbabwe adventure, to Bulawayo, where they had arranged to park their motorhome at the rabbi's home in that city. As with all the rabbi's travels and activities, every detail had been worked out well in advance. To end this tribute, although this has to be a work in progress every hour and every day bringing more memories to mind, I need to mention that saying of Rabbi Maisels that has remained with me from the time I heard him mention this in his sermon. You never know where the ball will bounce. One cannot tell how one's actions, good or bad, may affect others. So do all you can to let your thoughts, deeds, and actions be for the good. Rabbi Maisels will be hugely missed by all those who had the privilege of knowing, interacting, and working with him. It is almost impossible to absorb now that he is gone to his eternal rest. But we do accept wholeheartedly that it is a rest that he richly deserves. May his dear soul rest in peace. Yehi zichro baruch. May his memory be for a blessing.